Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Erin Holland. Erin serves as the Director of Education and Engagement at the American Sign Museum, which is located in Cincinnati, Ohio. In addition to informing us all about the history and mission of the American Sign Museum, Erin is here today to take us on a behind-the-scenes tour, and in the process, we'll come to better understand and appreciate the art and craft of sign making and the wide range of fascinating signs in the museum's outstanding and ever-growing collection. Let's start by meeting Erin and then hearing all about the American Sign Museum. Welcome, Erin. So delighted you're able to be here.
Hi, Jay. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a lot of fun finding out a little bit about the museum in preparation for the program, but eager to hear much more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would also be of interest to just briefly hear a little bit more about your background, perhaps what attracted you to the museum and what your current position entails, please.
Absolutely. So my background is actually in museum education. I studied and got my master's in that. So I was just drawn to not just the collections, but how people interact with them. Like people come to museums, see a thing, and just like it sparks so many different memories or conversations. And so that always drew it to me. So I went in and studied it, and have worked in art museums but what's really fun about this one is it's just so different. Like, yes, we can talk about art, but we can also talk about science and history. So there's a lot of avenues and ways to connect with people. And that's my favorite thing is having those moments with our visitors. What do they remember or what do they appreciate about the sign? And just kind of seeing, forgive the pun, the light bulb go off as it happens.
It seems like, given your background and interest, a perfect fit for this position, education and engagement. So you're with the general public all the time.
Yes, yes, I'm with the public a lot. We do the school tours, so K through 12, we do programming for them. I also arrange our adult programs, which runs workshops all the way through different lectures and a lot of different avenues and with different artists, sign makers, so a lot of different people all coming together. And I also do our social media and marketing, so a lot of engagement online as well.
Terrific. Well, perhaps we'll have some more time at the end to hear more about the education efforts and general public offerings too. But moving on to the museum, uh, why and how did it come about? When and who was involved, please?
Absolutely. So the museum started with our founder, Todd, in 1999. Todd was working for a magazine called Signs of the Times. This is still in publication, but it has been his family's magazine since 1906. But it is now a wider range. It's no longer with the family, but Todd at the time um, wanted something different. He calls it his midlife crisis, where he loved signs, but wasn't sure he wanted to be at the magazine anymore. And in their basement, they had just been kind of acquiring objects from sign folks for over the years. It's like, well, we don't want this anymore. You'll figure out what to do with it. And so, with some of those objects, he decided, I'm going to start a sign museum. And so, as we go through that sign museum, growth, he started collecting signs all across the country, loading up his truck and trailer. And eventually, it was kind of between a few different places of where we would open, but ultimately, with being based in Cincinnati, the magazine having been here as well,
Mm.
he decided we'll open right up in Cincinnati, especially because it's so close to so many different places. And so that collection started in a much smaller 4,000 square feet, so little tiny thing. We quickly outgrew it. And so our home in Camp Washington, that is the neighborhood we're in here in Cincinnati. We started with 20,000 square feet and we finally were able to get some of our big signs in there and whatnot. But even then, we already ran out of room. So we just last July, so just a couple months ago, turned our storage space into an additional half of the museum. So we doubled
Wow.
in size. So way more to see. It's a lot of great fun.
Terrific.
Yep, all started just from that midlife crisis project.
Well, very good use of Todd's time for sure.
Absolutely.
Um, Before we go in and see the layout, could you share with viewers how the overview is set up, especially now with the addition?
Absolutely. So you're greeted with some signs as you're walking in. And so our parking lot, you're definitely going to know where you are as you come in. But the American Sign Museum covers over 100 years of signage from the late 1870s up through roughly the 1980s or so. We get a touch into the 1990s there, but our strengths are really into the 50s and 60s as well. So when you walk in, of course, you're going to see the gift shop and all of those museum amenities. But you're going to start with the letter wall, which is a little bit of a preview of the timeline. So the first path you'll walk through shows a little bit roughly of how signs have evolved and the technologies changed. So signage has come a long way from the hand painted and the hand carved, both as we create new technologies, but also how things have changed as a culture. You're going to see a lot more symbols, very literal, like in the early 1900s, you see a hat, that means we sell hats. That is the symbol. But as we get more used to literacy and our everyone's reading abilities improve, those symbols are going to become more and more creative. And so that's when you start seeing like shell gas with the seashell. It's just a fun, our name is Shell, let's have a seashell. And so that'll be the path. But eventually, signs aren't meant to be seen in a timeline. They're meant to be seen in their cities, on their businesses. And so the last half of the museum is known as Main Street. And so it is designed around the signs, but looks like you're walking down a US city street from roughly the 1930s through the 1960s.
Terrific, terrific. Well, let's step inside, and what a fabulous image here. Where are we looking at on Main Street or the general area here?
So this is just after you've come in. So you'll have just finished the letter wall and you'll come to and say hello to one of the local favorites. So this is our Frisch's Big Boy. Depending on where you are in the country, you might know him by a few different names, but here in Cincinnati, he is the Frisch's Big Boy. And he was originally a redhead here in our area. So he kind of welcomes you to the rest of the timeline. So as you walk past, that's when you're going to start seeing the early electric signs behind him that will lead into some of the early neon signs. And then it ends with the big neon and plastic signs.
Can you give us a sense of how many signs, I guess, are on display or even more so in the whole overall collection?
Oh, that is tricky because Todd keeps going out and collecting them. I think with the expansion, we're now at about, we've got maybe about 800 signs on display. We have also more, it's not just signs, we have sign tools, sign resources, kits, those kind of things in display cases. But of the sign, what counts as a sign is probably about 800. And with the expansion, we probably have maybe almost half of the collection on display now. So we do still have plenty on in storage that we're hoping to kind of share in smaller exhibitions throughout the years coming up here.
How have they been obtained over the years? Because that's quite a significant number of signs.
Absolutely. So we've been very fortunate. Todd, in the early days, a lot of sign companies or collectors that he knew that needed to get him out of the garage, things like that. So a lot were donated, and we grew the collection that way. Some we went out and purchased, like if it fit, we really felt like it fit a need that we needed to show. There have been some purchases along the way. And now our reputation has kind of grown. People have heard of us. So we get a lot of people just reaching out of like, hey, I've got this sign. Sometimes they even just drop them off in our parking lot, which is not our favorite way to do it because we don't know where it came from. But that has happened before. So these days, it's a lot of people reaching out to us, giving us a few leads, which we really appreciate. Though we're running out of room again. Some of these big signs people tell us about that are coming down, we can't take them. They're too big.
Mm. For those who can't visit immediately or want to revisit some of the signs they've seen,
Mhm.
I know you also have an online exhibit area.
Yes, we do have an online audio tour, so that kind of takes you through all of the highlights, and then it also lets you go really in depth. So there's a lot more links to other information. It kind of gives you a lot more explanations on some of the things you might come across in the museum.
Terrific, terrific. Well, we're going to continue a tour inside and work our way down Main Street.
Yes.
So much color, lights to say the least, but what are some of the highlights we're seeing here? And what was the thinking as far as organizing it the way it's turned out?
hmm So Main Street is designed based on the signs themselves. And so what you see here, Georgiton's Pizza, the Grantland's Barbershop, Zenith, those were the signs. But what Todd ran into was it's hard to have examples of the hand painted signs, which was a huge part of the industry and signage history. So those don't exist. They didn't last or they were covered over. So he ran into an issue of, well, how do I show and celebrate that type of signage? And so what he did was contact some of his sign painter friends and contacts, and 28 of them came down in 2012 and they painted the town literally. So they
Wow.
each got their sign. So it's like, all right, you've got the pizza store, here's your sign. And they designed the rest of the storefront around it. Same with the barber shop. So these folks are wonderful craftsmen using gold leaf, lots of different hand painted techniques, and they created this main street that you see. So all of the care that went into the storefronts is definitely a highlight. And it's also home to some of our largest signs. So it's a little hard to get this sign just by itself, but behind the Acapulco is Howard Johnson's. And that was a mammoth sign from Utica, New York. And so for those who remembered Howard Johnson's, it's a wonderful memory. Um, for the kids, it's seeing a really cool, fun sign, but also talking about like, hey, this is what how you feel about McDonald's. This is how your grandparents probably feel about Howard Johnson. So it's a lot of good times to talk about those connections as well.
I know viewers in our area are well familiar with Howard
Absolutely.
Johnson's
Yeah,
since it originated right in, I believe it's Quincy,
it
Mass.
was. Yeah. So
Was the first,
hometown right there. Yes.
was the first Howard Johnson. So fond memories of the orange signage and definitely the 28 flavors.
Absolutely. What was
Um,
your favorite, Jay?
Well, well, at that time, I would say chocolate chip was
Nice.
maybe my favorite growing up. So I look forward to sampling other ice creams, but which has moved on since Howard Johnson's, but they're slowly missed. So it's a nice memory indeed.
Mhm.
And as we continue, um, another wonderful job by those craftsmen as we're looking down Main Street. Some of
So
the highlights here, please.
Well, yes. So this is the new section. This is just as of July of this year.
Wow.
And in May, a number of the same sign painters, but also some new ones. So I believe this time is about 36. They came back and their task was to basically make the new Main Street fit seamlessly. And so where the Army and Navy storefront and the jewelry, so you'll see a jewelry ring and the
Hmm.
Bernese Army store, that was the original end of the museum for several years. There used to be a garage there. And so we had a temporary white wall up that was hiding all of this from behind it and letting people work on installing the signs, getting things relit. And after we took the sign down, when we opened, people were like, well, where's the new wing? And it's like, so we did too good of a job. Those sign painters are so amazing. People have no idea. And it just walked down. Um,
Fabulous.
Absolutely. But so actually one of the big highlights we found at the crowd favorite is this one right in the foreground here that's a little cut off. This is a giant bunny and people just constantly asks us, where did this bunny come from? And as it is, it's from a place in, I believe it's pronounced Copley, it might be Copley, Ohio. It's a little bit further north from here. And it was this giant bunny, and it's holding what looks kind of like a burger. And the story behind this is it was actually for a place that was eventually called Charlie's Ribs. But the owner, his wife was named Bunny, nicknamed Bunny. And so the sign was just a cute little homage to his wife. So if you weren't from that town or didn't know that story, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. But so that bunny is a crowd favorite we have found. And then in the distance, you'll see him, he's kind of on his side there. We have our second big boy.
Yeah.
So Big Boy is actually a very complicated story. I have a whole hour talk just on him.
Wow.
But this is what this is an Elias Brothers Big Boy. So he came from Michigan. And so he looks a little bit different because the Frishes and Elias Brothers, very different kind of, even though it was the same company, but they had those big differences when you get up close to look at him. So, and he spins. So that automatically makes him a
Uh,
highlight for sure.
Huge draw. We don't have, unfortunately, the hour, but could you share one or two nuggets? You've raised my curiosity about the big boy.
Absolutely. So part of what makes Big Boy complicated is it actually started out in California with Bob's Big Boy. A lot of people have heard of that one. So Bob's Big Boy was the original, but people started copying off of his double-decker sandwich right away. And so he wanted to get a trademark from the government to protect his sandwich. And to do that, he needed a national franchise, but he didn't have time or money to start them all up as Bob's Big Boy. So what he did was he went across the country and found different diners, different locals, and even some of the copycats themselves, and offered them a deal that if they joined as a big boy, they could still maintain their identity and some of their local favorites, but they get the marketing, they officially get the burger, but they become a big boy. And the first place he offered that deal was here in Cincinnati to
Ah,
Frisch's. But Elias Brothers claims they are the first official franchise of Big Boy up in Michigan. Um, for the locals who do not know, Ohio and Michigan, we don't always get along. This is just another reason. But technically, they did sign the first contract in 1947, but Frisch's had started serving the big boys in 1946.
great, great.
Mm.
Well, thank you for that little background information. Let's continue our tour downtown and see quite a crowd here and what they're enjoying.
Yes, so this is the far end of the main street. So this is now the new end, and it has some of my favorite signs, honestly. So you'll see in the corner there a little bit of the now playing. That is our new theater marquee. That comes from Exeter, New Hampshire. It was known as the Ioka.
Oh,
And it's a wonderful theater that is being redeveloped. And so when the sign came down, the local community helped kind of preserve the sign and then negotiated helping get it to us here in Cincinnati. And one of the feedback we got on our old Main Street was, oh, can I go in here? I want to go inside. Well, there's nothing in there. You can't. So this one in particular with a theater was designed, yes, you can go in here. And so there's a little concession stand, lobby area, and then you can head into the theater and sit down and watch some videos about the museum. So definitely love that one. It's a great one.
terrific,
And then
terrific.
across the way there is the Clover Deli sign that comes from New York. And so was a great sign up there and really cool example of a wraparound. So they were on a corner
Mm,
store, so making the most of their location with this wonderful sign.
wonderful, wonderful.
Mhm.
And people here enjoying a little close-up of that area.
Absolutely.
In addition to touring like these individuals are there other interactive opportunities when you're at the museum in
Mhm.
addition to enjoying the fabulous signage?
Yes, so we do have that online tour available, so people can access that. We do have the videos that play on loop. We offer guided tours on the weekend, so our wonderful
Ah,
tour guide Alex takes people through. And then on Saturdays, we also invite folks, it's on a limited capacity, but they can visit the neon shop and actually see how neon glass tube bending happens and how they actually make the signs.
And here we are, Neon Works, I believe,
Yes.
has formally joined the museum after being housed in it. A little bit about this company and its role with the museum.
Absolutely. So Neon Works has been an amazing partner of the museum before we were actually even physically a museum.
Mm.
And so Tom here was one of the original owners. So he and Greg Pond were our Neon Works team. They had been operating a little bit further north here in Cincinnati in a different neighborhood. But as Todd was working on this new part of the museum, he's like, well, I need someone to fix the signs. And they'd already been doing it. So it's like, well, do you guys want to move, get a little more space, get a little closer? And so they actually moved in and opened before the museum was open. They moved in and opened in 2010, and the museum here didn't open until 2012. So they got settled in and have a great business working with the local publics on repair work, custom orders. But as the years have gone on, they're one of the only full functioning neon shops within about 100-mile radius, and it kind
Mm.
of keeps growing every year. And so they help keep our signs lit. And so as things were progressing, Tom trying to figure out what happens in the future and whatnot, it kind of made more sense of like, well, let's just make it official. And so they have now joined our team more officially. So we've gone from friends to basically family, and it's been wonderful. So they, like I said, still do custom work and repair, but we're also going to be increasing some of our education offerings with them.
Mm.
So beyond expanding these demonstrations that they do, and once we eventually give them a little more space, we're looking to doing workshops as well, so people can actually try out and master some of these skills.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, definitely sounds like a perfect match indeed. Very fortuitous for both organizations for sure. And then to extend it to future programming
Mhm.
just builds and enriches the visitor's experience. So incredible.
Yeah, we're
And
very excited.
in addition to Neon Works, and the museum itself related are programs and events and other opportunities that people can participate in the museum. Would you share a little bit about them, please?
Absolutely. So we do have the programs that we host here ourselves, that involve all different kinds of aspects of signage or the history of the signs in the community. So that can be lectures, that can be like the Talk About Big Boy that I mentioned, where we take a dive in. And then way in the back there, you're going to see that white wall with the Tata Teen. That is the wall of our
Mhm.
classroom. So we have a brand new classroom space so that learners of all ages can get involved in the sign making through workshops or activities. But we also host a lot of events. So it's a great place for parties, um, corporate events, weddings. So this particular space that we're looking at right now is called the gallery, and it can hold up to 300 people seated.
Mm.
So this will be a place for weddings. This one is actually set up for a music performance that we had later this evening with one of the amazing companies that are here in Cincinnati. So it's a great chance to have basically any kind of event. So we can do up to 300. We have some smaller spaces as well. So if you're looking for something a little more intimate as well.
That's fabulous, fabulous. Can you give us just a brief sense of some of the workshops, whether they're education for school groups
Mhm.
or adults that you offer?
Absolutely. So for the schools, we offer programming that focuses either on visual literacy or financial literacy. And so the visual literacy with the young ones, we talk about what are symbols and how do signs use them? How do businesses use them to communicate? And as they age up into the program, that then turns into marketing and branding. So we look at what are those elements. And in the high school ages, they're working on coming up with pitches for what could actually be a customer, come up with a brand for them. And then with financial literacy, this all came from, we have a wonderful 1963 McDonald's sign from Huntsville, Alabama. And all of the kids, every time they go look at it, it's like they love that sign because they recognize McDonald's. But then they look up and at the very top, they see a blinking 15 cents and go with a, oh my gosh, a burger costs 15 cents. And so it's like, all right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about inflation. So our high school program was born from there, where we actually talk about the causes and get into budgeting practices. And for the younger kids, it's looking at the signs for like wants and needs. How was it that a shoe once cost $5 and all of those things? So that's our school age. But then for the adults, we have things like we have a upcoming here a workshop where they're going to be able to create dimensional wood signs. So carving the
Mm.
wood, come like starting from scratch. They can make the designs, work with the teacher all the way through, and we'll be using those tools to make those dimensional signs.
Well, I hate to share my age, but I definitely remember our local McDonald's and the 15-cent sign sticks in my memory. I'm flashing back as you're speaking.
Absolutely.
Terrific sign and anticipating the change in the signs as far as how many are sold
Mhm.
was activity to look forward to driving by McDonald's growing up for sure.
Yeah, I
What's
remember when mine changed from they had stuck at the over 99 billion sold for a while, and then they finally just locked it in and finally changed it. So I remember that from my childhood of like, oh, it just ticked up to 99. Now we got to lock it in.
That's funny. What's the typical or some of the interesting reactions and feedback you've gotten either from school groups or general public?
Um, a lot of especially when they come onto Main Street is just the wow. Like
Yeah.
just seeing the colors, seeing all of the motion, just that moment of like, oh wow. Because when people a lot of it we hear is like, oh, when we saw Sign Museum, we kind of thought this was gonna be boring. Like it's like who cares? It's signs. But when they come in and see it's like this is really fun, it's really cool. So that is one that we get a lot. And then depending on the age, like we get a lot of folks who are sharing their sign stories with us, whether it's if they actually remember the sign they see here, or just asking about or telling us about the signs that now they're thinking about. So we really love to see when people can make those connections of like, oh man, yeah, there was this really cool sign when in my neighborhood, and I don't know what happened to it, but so kind of jarring those memories. And the random one is they love our bathrooms. We get that a lot. So if you come on a road trip, just know we will have you taken care of on multiple fronts.
Wow, well, that sounds like a future show for sure. Well, I think it's a tribute to Todd, yourself, and other staff members to make it such an inviting, engaging place for our visitors, and definitely seems like it's truly appreciated. Well, I'm sure there are some current, upcoming, and future plans, even though you've just completed this major renovation. And I think, given our time, we'll have your contact information, the
Mhm.
museum's information for viewers and others to stay informed and just to
Absolutely.
find out more, perhaps pursue the online exhibit area and get in a little more details of the wonderful overview that you've provided. But
Absolutely.
unfortunately, Erin, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you again for taking the time. That was fascinating and definitely hope I have the opportunity to visit someday. Thank you and continued success with all your efforts.
Well, thank you very much for having us. And if you can't make it here, like I said, we've got that wonderful online tour, or you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram. We're very active on there and like to give updates throughout. So hopefully you'll all join us, whether it's virtually or in person someday.
For sure. Thank you. Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.
Hey, Mom. I got the job.
You've got the job. Welcome aboard.
I've got a job to do today.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Donate to Goodwill. Help provide job training in your community.